State, but he can't play it. Big time college football, right? 510 yards week 1. Come on. Yeah. What are we talking about here?
And they're like, Shedeur and Travis are much like the greats that we see at the top of their professions. Like, they love that shit too. Like, give it to us. We want to hear the doubters. We want to hear the people who don't think we'll be able to do it.
Good job, young man. Stay up. You know it.
And the other kid that plays both ways, he's incredible.
Aaron Rodgers just made a move that sent a serious ripple through the NFL world, and what he shared about Shedeur Sanders has people locked in across the league. The future Hall of Fame quarterback, widely respected as one of the greatest to ever play the position, spoke during a press conference and broke down his thoughts on Shadur in a way that immediately grabbed attention. Rodgers did not dance around it. He spoke candidly about watching Shedeur Sanders grow from Jackson State to Colorado and now stepping toward the NFL spotlight, and his perspective pulled back the curtain on how elite veterans really view the next wave of quarterbacks. This was not surface-level praise or something tossed out for the media cycle. This is Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time NFL MVP and Super Bowl champion, a quarterback who has seen every era, every scheme, and every type of player over nearly 2 decades in the league.
It's part of it. A lot of these guys in here and out there, you know, have played with relatives or fathers against them. You know, Baltimore or Cincinnati has Chris Jenkins' son. I played with his uncle. Tampa has Antoine Winfield Jr. I played against his dad for a number of years. Obviously, Joey in here, you know, played against his dad. So it's fun because it means I'm still playing.
For someone like him to seriously evaluate a young quarterback trying to carve out his lane says a lot about how closely Shedeur's path is being tracked inside football circles. The timing of the conversation matters too. Rodgers was in a routine media session, answering questions about his team, the season ahead, and the state of the league. When the topic shifted toward facing the sons and relatives of players he once competed against earlier in his career, Rodgers acknowledged he has reached that stage where longevity puts him in a different category altogether. The discussion shifted towards something Rodgers is seeing more often now, facing the children of former teammates and longtime opponents. He brought up Antoine Winfield Jr. in Tampa Bay, pointing out how he spent years lining up against his father before the next generation arrived. He also mentioned Chris Jenkins' son now playing in the league, another reminder of how time moves fast in the NFL.
Just like you, I think if you were here this weekend, you get a chance to feel it too. Colorado's a football school. Like, it is a football school right now.
Do you remember playing against Deion Sanders?
Yeah. I didn't throw him a pick, thankfully. But he was playing in Baltimore in 2005 when we went down there Monday night. And I came in the game, we were down. So we were down 41-3. And I had a fun exchange with him between the third and fourth quarters. And luckily, I kept it tight when we lost 51-3.
From there, the conversation naturally turned to Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, a player Rodgers faced back in 2005 when he was still a young backup with the Green Bay Packers, and Deion was closing out his Hall of Fame career with the Baltimore Ravens. Rodgers reflected on that Monday night game in Baltimore, a tough one where he entered late after the score had already gotten out of hand. The Packers were down 41-3 when he stepped onto the field, and the night only got rougher from there. He recalled a lighthearted moment with Deion Sanders between the third and fourth quarters, laughing about the fact that he managed to avoid throwing an interception to one of the greatest defensive backs of all time, even though the final score ended at 51-3. That mix of humility and humor, openly revisiting a blowout loss from nearly 2 decades ago, says a lot about Rodgers' mindset and why he has earned respect across the league. But the tone shifted when he moved from talking about Deion to focusing on Shedeur Sanders, and that pivot carried real weight. Rodgers made it clear that he has followed Shedeur's career closely, not just catching highlights or hearing secondhand buzz.
I've followed Shedeur's career. I mean, any football fan that watched him go from Jackson to Boulder, and that being kind of a former Pac-12 school, you know, obviously was pulling for him. And, you know, there's a tough draft slide, obviously much longer wait than mine was. But it seems like he's, you know, been patient and worked on his craft, and he's been playing pretty good last few weeks.
He emphasized sustained attention, watching games and tracking growth over time. When you consider that this is coming from one of the most accomplished and busy figures in professional football, it underscores how seriously Shedeur's journey from an HBCU to a Power 5 program and now toward the NFL is being taken by people who truly know the game. This is not something Aaron Rodgers does for every young quarterback entering the league. He is not spending his time breaking down film on every draft prospect or keeping tabs on every rookie starter. The fact that Shedeur Sanders caught his attention and held it long enough for Rodgers to follow his entire career path says a lot about what he sees on the field. Rodgers is widely viewed as one of the sharpest football minds to ever play the position. His understanding of quarterback play, decision-making, and leadership sits on a different level. When someone with that kind of football IQ says he has been tracking a young quarterback's development, it carries real weight and signals that there is something different there. He pointed out that anyone paying attention to college football could see the talent and the storyline as Shadur moved from Jackson State to Boulder. Rodgers also noted that his own background as a former Pac-12 quarterback at California gave him extra interest in watching Colorado compete in that conference. That connection made his attention to Shedur's growth even more deliberate. What stands out is that Rodgers openly supported Shadur along the way, despite having nothing to gain from it. For a quarterback of his stature to back a young player trying to establish himself speaks to genuine respect rather than empty praise. The results back it up. Shadur led Jackson State to an undefeated season and a SWAC championship, then followed his father to Colorado and helped flip a struggling program almost overnight. A team that won just one game the year before suddenly became nationally relevant, climbing to 5 wins, while Shadur put up numbers that pushed him into early Heisman Trophy discussions. Rodgers then addressed what may be the most uncomfortable and debated chapter of Shedeur Sanders' transition to the NFL, his draft experience. He acknowledged that Shadur endured a difficult draft slide and noted that the wait was far longer than the one he personally went through. That comparison matters for several reasons, starting with the fact that Rodgers understands draft disappointment firsthand. Back in 2005, Rodgers fell to the 24th overall pick when many expected him to be selected much earlier, possibly even first overall. Over the years, he has openly talked about how painful that day was, sitting in the green room and watching quarterback after quarterback hear their name called before his. The feeling of being overlooked and questioned stuck with him for a long time. So when Rodgers spoke on Shedur's draft situation, it came from lived experience. He understands how hard it is to process that kind of setback on a day that is supposed to celebrate your future. What made his comments stand out even more is that he did not soften the reality or brush it aside. He clearly acknowledged that Shedur's wait was significantly longer than his own. Falling into the 5th round is a completely different situation than slipping late in the 1st. That gap represents the difference between immediate security and long-term uncertainty, between being labeled a franchise investment and being a player teams repeatedly passed over. The conversation grew more layered when the show's host suggested that Shadur should not have fallen that far and hinted at broader league dynamics influencing the outcome. Rodgers did not directly endorse that idea, but his willingness to highlight the length and difficulty of Shedur's wait suggested that he recognized how unusual the situation felt. Rather than leaning into speculation, his comments reflected empathy, awareness, and an understanding that draft results do not always align cleanly with talent or potential. Whether someone believes there were outside forces influencing Shedeur Sanders' draft position or sees it as the result of traditional evaluations and team decisions, the outcome still raises questions. A quarterback who won consistently at every level, produced eye-catching numbers, showed high-end arm talent, moved well in and out of the pocket, carried himself with leadership and composure, and came from one of the most football-savvy families the sport has ever seen, ended up falling to the 5th round. For many observers, that result simply did not align with the full picture, and Rodgers acknowledging how difficult that slide was gave voice to that uncertainty. What Rodgers focused on next may have been the most meaningful part of the conversation. From Shedur's perspective, he pointed out that despite the frustration of draft day, the young quarterback has stayed patient, continued sharpening his skills, and has shown steady improvement in recent weeks. That point deserves real attention. Patience is critical for young quarterbacks entering the NFL. The speed of the game, the complexity of defenses, and the physical demands are on a completely different level than college football. Every player faces a learning curve, and how they handle that adjustment often determines how their career unfolds. Rodgers highlighted that Shadur has not unraveled under pressure. He has not shown public frustration, has not lost confidence, and has not let the situation define him. That matters, especially for someone who experienced a long draft wait and then had to earn opportunities rather than being handed them. Many players in that position struggle with resentment or impatience, but Rodgers made it clear that Shadur has taken a different approach, staying composed and focused while waiting for his moment. Shedeur Sanders has not reacted with frustration or entitlement, and Rodgers made it clear that he notices and respects that approach. He also pointed out that Shadur has been working on his craft, which is an important distinction. That observation goes beyond simply watching game results. You cannot identify real development unless you are paying close attention to technique, footwork, Timing, decision-making, and mechanics. Those technical elements of quarterback play only show up when someone is truly locked in on the details. Rodgers' ability to comment on that kind of progress suggests he has been studying Shedeur's game beyond surface-level viewing. He has been watching through the lens of a veteran quarterback, focusing on the small things that separate competent players from high-level ones. What Rodgers conveyed is that he sees growth. He sees a young quarterback who is putting in the work and showing improvement over time. Coming from someone with his experience and football intelligence, that kind of evaluation carries real weight. The final point Rodgers made may have been the most telling. He noted that Shadur has been playing solid football over the past few weeks. On the surface, that phrasing might sound restrained, but context matters. Rodgers is known for being deliberate and precise with his words, especially when assessing other quarterbacks. When a veteran of his caliber says a fifth-round rookie has been holding his own in a difficult situation, it speaks volumes. Rodgers understands better than almost anyone how demanding the quarterback position is and how dependent success can be on protection, scheme, and support. For him to watch Shadur operate within a challenging offensive environment and still come away with a positive assessment underscores the level of respect behind those words. All of this adds up to a strong, positive signal about Shedeur Sanders' talent and long-term potential. What stands out just as much as what Aaron Rodgers said is what he chose not to say. There was no criticism, no hedging, no follow-up comments pointing out flaws or areas that needed fixing. For someone as analytical and detail-focused as Rodgers, the absence of critique carries real meaning. If Rodgers had seen major mechanical issues, decision-making concerns, or fundamental problems in Shedur's game, he likely would have acknowledged them in a careful, diplomatic way. Instead, his assessment stayed consistently positive. From following Shedur's career, to supporting him along the way, to recognizing the difficulty of his draft experience, to praising his patience, work ethic, and recent performance, the message stayed clear and steady. That consistency suggests Rodgers genuinely believes Shadur has the tools needed to succeed at the professional level. The broader context of the interview makes that even more meaningful. Rodgers was fielding questions about his own team, league-wide topics, player behavior, and on-field strategy. The question about Shadur could have easily been brushed aside as a quick response. Instead, Rodgers leaned into it. He recalled specific memories from playing against Deion Sanders, acknowledged tracking Shedur's development over time, and offered thoughtful observations about what he has seen. That level of detail does not come from casual interest or surface-level awareness. This was not about being polite or saying what sounded good in the moment. It reflected genuine respect from one quarterback to another, even across generations. There is also a deeper connection at play. Rodgers faced Deion Sanders at the tail end of Primetime's legendary career. Now, nearly 2 decades later, he is watching Deion's son work to establish himself in the same league. That full-circle moment links different eras of football. Rodgers' respect for the Sanders family legacy is clear, and that respect carries over directly to how he views Shadur and his place in the game moving forward. When a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, someone who has competed against the very best players the NFL has ever seen, looks at Shedeur Sanders and finds him worth tracking, supporting, and believing in, that carries real significance. It is not casual attention. It reflects recognition from someone who understands what it takes to survive and succeed at the highest level. Another part of Rodgers' response connects directly to Shedur's situation, even though he was initially answering a broader question about young players on his own team. Rodgers emphasized that the mental side of being a young player in the NFL is just as important as learning schemes and playbooks. He pointed out that adversity shows up for everyone at every stage of a career, but it hits harder when you are young because it can feel overwhelming and destabilizing. That description lines up closely with what Shadur has faced. Dropping to the 5th round after believing he could be selected much earlier is a major challenge. Stepping into a starting role behind a struggling offensive line with limited support adds another layer. On top of that comes constant outside evaluation, criticism from certain media voices, and ongoing debate about expectations, background, and whether success is earned or assumed because of his last name. Those pressures represent the kind of early career adversity Rodgers was talking about. Based on how Shadur has carried himself so far, he has responded with composure, focus, and mental toughness rather than letting the noise define him. What makes Rodgers' perspective even more meaningful is that his own career mirrors that path in many ways. Rodgers slipped to the 24th overall pick, spent years waiting behind Brett Favre, and faced questions about whether his opportunity would ever come. When it finally did, he maximized it and built one of the most accomplished quarterback careers in league history. He transformed early disappointment into motivation, using it to sharpen his preparation and elevate his performance. That history gives weight to how he views Shedeur's journey and why his belief in how adversity can shape a player matters. Aaron Rodgers has spoken many times over the years about how his own draft experience shaped him and left a lasting edge in his mindset. That sense of being overlooked became part of who he was as a player. When Rodgers looks at Shedeur Sanders now, it is easy to see why there may be a personal connection. Both are talented quarterbacks who slid further than expected and were forced into a position where proving people wrong became part of the journey. That storyline is one Rodgers understands deeply, and it likely explains why he has followed Shadeur's path with genuine interest rather than casual awareness. Another part of Rodgers' comments that stood out was his acknowledgement that Shadur is still, in many ways, a developing rookie. He is learning the professional game, adjusting to new demands, and continuing to refine his skills at the highest level. That context often gets lost in today's reaction-driven sports coverage. There is constant pressure to label young players immediately, either as future cornerstones or early disappointments, based on a small sample of games. Rodgers, with nearly 2 decades of experience, understands that quarterback development is rarely instant. History supports that view. Peyton Manning struggled as a rookie before becoming one of the most accomplished quarterbacks ever. Troy Aikman endured a winless season early in his career. Josh Allen faced heavy criticism before putting it all together. Even Rodgers himself spent 3 full seasons learning from the sideline before becoming a starter. So when Rodgers frames Shadur as a player who is still growing, while also noting that he is playing solid football and putting in the work, it reflects the long-term perspective of someone who has lived through that process. That kind of evaluation carries weight precisely because it is patient and measured. From Shedur's point of view, receiving public support from a quarterback of Rodgers' stature matters. Being a young player trying to establish credibility in the NFL comes with constant scrutiny and doubt. Knowing that one of the greatest to ever play the position has tracked your career, respected how you handled adversity, and believes in your progress provides validation that goes beyond headlines or box scores. That kind of recognition can provide a real confidence lift, and it also carries influence beyond the moment itself. When Aaron Rodgers shares his perspective, people across the league pay attention. Coaches, front offices, players, and media members all value his insight into quarterback play because of what he has accomplished and how deeply he understands the position. Even in a routine press conference setting, Rodgers' approval adds credibility in a way numbers alone cannot. The contrast between how Rodgers evaluates Shedeur Sanders and how certain media figures discuss him is noticeable. Rodgers approaches the position from decades of first-hand experience. He studies the details, understands development curves, and knows how context shapes performance. When he watches Shadur, he sees ability, growth, patience, work ethic, and solid play within challenging circumstances. Some media evaluations, on the other hand, focus heavily on selective data points or short-term results and arrive at far harsher conclusions. Those differences highlight an important question about perspective and expertise. Rodgers has no personal incentive to elevate a young quarterback on another team. His comments do not benefit him professionally, nor do they drive attention in the same way strong criticism often does. If anything, being dismissive would be easier and more aligned with the modern sports media cycle. Instead, Rodgers chose to speak thoughtfully and positively because that is what he believes the film shows. That decision gives his words added weight. Another detail that matters is Rodgers acknowledging Shedur's time at Jackson State. Many evaluators and fans did not closely follow his performance at an HBCU, reflecting long-standing questions around competition level at those programs. Rodgers did not seem influenced by that bias. He paid attention to Shedur's production and command of the game regardless of conference, recognizing talent based on performance rather than labels. That broader lens reinforces why Rodgers' evaluation resonates and why his support carries meaning within football circles. Rodgers followed Shedeur Sanders as he made the jump to a Power 5 program and continued producing against stronger competition. Seeing consistent performance across different levels, conferences, and supporting casts told Rodgers what he needed to know about Shedur's ability. The talent translated, the skill set held up. The quarterback showed he could function and succeed regardless of circumstance. That kind of evaluation stands in contrast to simplified narratives that reduce his success to his last name or the level of competition he faced early on. Rodgers' perspective reflects a deeper process, watching how a player adapts when variables change rather than relying on surface explanations. The timing of Rodgers' comments also matters. He spoke during the current NFL season, while Shadur is actively playing and still establishing himself. He could have waited until the offseason, until the pressure cooled, or until there was less public debate surrounding the young quarterback. Instead, he chose to speak in the middle of the scrutiny. Whether intentional or simply honest answers to direct questions, the result is the same. A respected veteran used his platform at a moment when perception is still being shaped. That kind of support, offered in real time rather than retrospectively, carries added weight and connects generations of quarterbacks in a meaningful way. There are clear parallels between Rodgers' early career arc and where Shadur stands now. Both entered the league with questions about draft position. Both experienced the frustration of being passed over. Both were placed in situations where they had to earn belief rather than receive it automatically. Both dealt with skepticism from outside voices. Rodgers turned his draft disappointment into motivation, building one of the most accomplished quarterback careers in league history. Whether Shadur follows a similar path remains unknown, but early indicators point in a positive direction. The talent is evident. The work ethic has been noted. The mental resilience has shown itself under pressure. Add to that the influence of high-level coaching from his father and the public support of one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and the foundation is there. Success is never guaranteed, but the ingredients matter. Another detail worth highlighting is that Rodgers did not rely on vague compliments. He referenced specific elements such as patience, commitment to improvement, and recent on-field performance. That level of specificity signals real attention and informed judgment rather than politeness. In a media environment often driven by rapid reactions and simplified takes, thoughtful analysis from someone with deep experience stands out. Rodgers' comments suggest that many within football circles, players and coaches who understand the demands of the position, see qualities in Shedeur that are not always reflected in broader conversation. Different evaluators will always have different opinions, often shaped by selective data or limited context. But when elite quarterbacks consistently recognize progress, resilience, and ability, that perspective deserves consideration. For Cleveland, hearing that kind of evaluation from Aaron Rodgers offers encouragement. The franchise has endured years of instability at the quarterback position, and patience has often been in short supply. While no endorsement guarantees success, having a respected veteran express confidence in a young quarterback's development suggests the organization may be moving in the right direction. At the very least, it reinforces the value of giving Shadur time, support, and proper resources to grow. Quarterback development is rarely linear, and progress often comes with challenges along the way. Rodgers' assessment points toward patience, context, and long-term vision rather than rushing to conclusions based on noise. When you step back and look at the full picture, the message is clear. Aaron Rodgers did not stumble into these comments. He did not speak loosely or without intention. He evaluated Shedeur Sanders the same way he has evaluated quarterbacks his entire career, through patience, detail, context, and an understanding of how hard this position really is. Rodgers has seen the league chew up talented players who were rushed, misjudged, or written off too early. He has lived the draft disappointment. He has lived the waiting. He has lived the doubt. And when someone with that background says he sees progress, toughness, and real potential, that matters far more than the loudest voices chasing attention. Shedur's story is still being written. Nothing is guaranteed, but the foundation is there, and the people who actually understand the game see it. Development is happening, growth is real. The situation is difficult, but the response has been steady and professional. This is how careers are built, not through hype, not through panic, but through work, patience, and belief from the right places. If you want deeper breakdowns like this, real football context without the noise, and analysis that actually respects the game, make sure you're locked in with Huddle Files. That's where the film, the facts, and the full story live. And you already know, we'll have every second of it broken down, every twist, every leak, every hidden play behind the headlines. So like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share it out. Stay locked in with Huddle Files, where the real NFL stories live.